First of all, it's my first time being at the ABCA Conference. I want to have a good joke for you, but I'm not that funny as a person. And the jokes that I would tell, we have to go to the bar, and some of you guys might not be able to get in. So I'm going to go and tell you guys about something that's very dear to my heart. I'm the vice president of armcare.com. My name's Ryan Croton, and I'm here to present to you a new type of analytics related to assessing the throwing arm for strength and range of motion. This is going to give you a new language to be able to use with your athletes, to be able to monitor your athletes, to be able to give them greater opportunities in the sport of baseball. And so the presentation is called Strength Matters Most, a new analytics frontier in player development. I appreciate your attention. There's not a lot of people here, so I think it's great. So the first thing, I think before I talk about who we are, what we do, we have to know where we're going. I think if everybody raised their hand, do you guys all know somebody who's had an injury, surgery? Yep, you worked with them, just about everybody in the room. So we know there's a big problem, and it's one that we all have to deal with. And so one of the biggest issues in baseball is that we don't have enough observation. We're sometimes coaching without monitoring. We're not monitoring after throwing. We're not monitoring before throwing for arm strength and range of motion. And this sets us up for failure, both for position players and pitchers. Position players actually have worse comebacks from Tommy John surgery relative to pitchers. So I know what we're talking about is very pitching heavy, but if you have position players, this is important for you to listen up as well. So with our technology, we don't want to miss observations. We offer a portable dynamometer, and I'm going to talk to you guys about what that is. It's a strength testing tool. When we talk about dynamometry, just think it tests force that's got an embedded IMU. And this can go in the athlete's bag. It can go anywhere that the athlete does, so that we're always going to know and have a stencil of what arm strength looks like and what range of motion looks like. Okay, so this is where we're headed. We want this to be in the bags of every player. We want coaches to be able to use this properly because you guys are the ones that matter. You know, I've come from Major League Baseball. I'm going to get into a little bit of my background, but the coaches are the first line defense. You guys are the most important. I was a strength coach. I worked with medical staff members, and you guys are the ones that are managing their throwing programs. We need you guys to be able to observe them and to be able to monitor them. So we're going to get into it. So a little bit about my background. I was the director of performance integration for the Los Angeles Angels. I was overseeing strength and conditioning and sports science primarily, and we developed a huge monitoring process. In 2017, we had the worst injuries in baseball. We had more throwing arm injuries than any team in the league. And it's a huge cause for concern. And we got together and we decided, what are we going to do about this for next season? And our approach was, we're going to be more strict in looking at passive range of motion and biomechanics. We're going to use biomechanical tools. We're going to use 2D video, slow motion video. We're going to focus on what we need to do as benchmarks to make our athletes healthy. And guess what happened in 2018? We had more injuries. It was worse. So we knew that that wasn't the right approach. We couldn't keep our athletes healthy by making movement changes, and we couldn't keep them healthy by passive range of motion. So lo and behold, the background that I have is a strength coach, and I wanted to understand how force changes in the throwing arm. We needed to have individualized throwing programs. We needed individualized strength programs. And so we instituted dynamometry. And with dynamometry, we were able to cut our injury list days by 50%. Now, that's not just the dynamometer. We had a huge amount of people that worked with us and were able to make great decisions in our training, but we had communication and we had the right device. And that gave us a chance to win, which is so important. And when you think of injuries, especially in professional baseball, I don't know if this is happening for you guys in your own industries, but as a strength coach, you get fired over injuries. As a medical staff member, you get fired over repeat injuries. And now pitching coaches are losing their jobs because they're in charge of the workload, the management of the pitcher, how long they're staying in games. If you have a facility, you have athletes that are injured, you're going to have an issue making money. You need them in the door. You know, if you're a parent, with your kids. You're going to lose a season of watching them play in athlete. You're going to be losing the opportunity to gain a college scholarship or potentially be drafted. We're also cutting money from kids that have had injury histories now in the major league level and the MLB draft. Problem, and it's an issue that we all have to deal with. And together, I think we can make it work, especially around our product. So we need to understand the problem, okay? And we know that injuries are an issue, but we need to understand how are they caused. People might not know this. So when I look at research, I'm looking for the effectiveness of the studies and how impactful they are to injuries. And the first thing is range of motion studies. There's been lots of studies on passive range of motion. And passive range of motion, if you guys aren't used to it, it's basically you're lying a dude or a girl down on a table and you're cranking their arm in different positions, which is so unlike what happens in the real thing. Okay, we don't test athletes. When they throw, they're upright, their trunks are upright, their range of motion is active. So there's a big problem with that. Doesn't explain a lot of the injury risk. Then we have workload schedules. I've done a lot of research into this at the professional level, but they're really only effective at the youth amateur level. College, there's not a lot of evidence to say that workload monitoring is effective. In professional baseball, it's like all over the place. 100 pitch limit. Everybody else is different in this room. We have different bodies, different injury histories, yet we all give our athletes the same inning progressions, the same pitch counts, and the same total value, and that's not really effective. Our product is essentially based on individualizing these things, being able to individualize our pitch count. So workload, not a very big factor. Now this is going to be surprising. I'm a biomechanist. I study 3D motion analysis, and I don't believe biomechanics is that credible for injury. It is for performance. So we utilize this to how to make our athletes throw faster. But as far as injury, there's only been one study ever published since 1946 on medial elbow injuries, one study that has connected joint loads to injury. And it was done with 2D video with 23 athletes. And this has been accepted as being the right way to go. And like what I told you, we looked at biomechanics, and a lot of our injured list athletes had high scouting biomechanics grades. That really kind of was different for me. We found more athletes on the injured list that what we thought threw cleaner than those who were more deceptive, herky-jerky, inverted W, all that kind of stuff. So I don't believe it's the biggest injury risk factor. For me, it's strength deficits and imbalances. This is something that we can manage. This is something that's related to health, velocity, and command. And it is going to change over the course of the season, and we need to be able to monitor it because it has the greatest effect on all the other factors. We gain more range of motion, we don't have strength, that's a problem. We don't monitor strength after workloads, that's an issue. We have biomechanical flaws we need to fix first with strength before we start making adjustments. Imagine you take an athlete and you're manipulating the way that they take the ball out of their glove, you're changing their arm path, but their arm is still weak. So that's going to also precipitate injury. So we got to watch out for that. So strength to me is the essential piece, and it's something that we can manage with dynamometry, with technology. Same image, okay? We have fatigue as the enemy. So the last one, the title of the slide was Strength Matters Most. That's the mantra and the message that I always want to give to people. Strength matters most, especially for our throwing athletes. And this looks like a burner on a stove, and you'll see that different regions give the burner a little more heat, but in the center is fatigue. We're all trying to manage keeping our athletes healthy and preventing fatigue. This has been shown in research that fatigue increases injury risk by 36 times. That is huge. Fatigue is the issue. And when we think of fatigue, the most principal cause of fatigue is weakness. It's weakness. That's what happens with fatigue. Our arm gets weak, and all of a sudden, this causes more injury to our throwing athletes. That's a big issue. So, again, this reaffirms our message, strength matters most, but fatigue is the enemy, and strength is the opponent to enemy, and that's what we need to focus on with our athletes. So you need a game plan, and I've kind of laid it out, a really simple bullet point for a game plan if you have our technology, and if you don't, sports science. And you need to make sure your athletes are as strong and as balanced as possible with strength. Okay, we look at different combinations of strength from front of the shoulder, back of the shoulder, forearm strength, We need to ensure that they are strong and as balanced as possible, okay? That's important. The next, we talked about aggressively monitor for fatigue. If we don't evaluate our athletes after training sessions, after throwing sessions, we are putting our athletes at risk, okay? We have to be aggressive in monitoring fatigue. That's the enemy. Fatigue is the enemy. And if we're not doing that, we don't know what's individualized for our athlete, okay? We're gonna get into that a little bit. We have to use the player data to be ready. They're ready. And you can't use it on the day. That's not very good data. We have to be actionable with our programming. We have to be dynamic. You have to be able to pivot. You can't just lay out a program, I don't believe, on paper and think that that's the script that you're gonna make music from. You need to be able to be dynamic, okay? That's important. Now, I'll give you an evolution of dynamometry because I know we've talked about it and it's a little bit maybe unclear for some of you, but when I started with the Angels, we first started with hand grip dynamometers. Can you guys raise your hand if you use a hand grip dynamometer with your athletes? Okay, really common. Yeah, great. So you got some familiarity. Now, we looked at the forearm and we saw that strength did not rebound in 24 hours post-pitching. So we knew, okay, there is a way to monitor fatigue with our athletes, okay? But we only had a part of the story because we didn't look at the shoulder. And we realized that most of our athletes on our injured list, they were either very strong or very weak. We didn't see any clear trends, okay, with professional athletes. You guys might be seeing that with your athletes who may not be, physically mature, have a high degree of forearm strength, but we didn't see any kind of real relationship there. So we stepped it up a notch. We started paying a lot of money, and this is where I'm saying our dynamometry did have an effect, a 50% reduction in injury list days. The other thing I didn't tell you is that at the major league level, we lowered our injury list days by 65%, okay? And we had no surgeries at the major league level for 2 competitive seasons doing this monitoring approach. Now, we couldn't pitch very well, so we didn't win that much, but our dynamometry was expensive, okay? We had limitations. At the minor league level, athletes were getting hurt on the road. We had such a strong monitoring process at home that we were able to cover it. We were able to make adjustments, but on the road we had issues. And this type of technology took a lot of clinicians. We had to have a lot of people, we had strength coaches, a lot of people manning this technology to get the data, and that's not effective. That long run, that's not effective, and we had to do this before games. We were missing the post-game assessment. We did not know our velo programs. We did not know how they were able to respond to their velocity enhancement programs. We had issues. We were not evaluating this kind of thing. And so one of the options was to look at hand dynamometry, okay? And you're gonna see the clinician is wearing the device and pushing against the athlete pushing against him, and all of us have different strength in the room, and using this technology, we're all gonna get different readings. In a minor league baseball, that's not good because if our athletes move up levels, we're all testing them differently. That's not a great monitoring process. We're getting different data. And it really sucks because you always need a clinician. You always need a strength coach. You always need somebody to be able to manage these things. And so in the winter of 2020, I saw Dynamometer. I saw ArmCare, and I really loved it. We're portable. Now it's player-led. It doesn't take up any yet in the athlete goes. And one of the main things is that you're going to have athletes training in the offseason away from you. You're going to have pro athletes that are going to see you won't be able to see. And you'll be able to have a monitoring anywhere they go for as long as they play. You'll be able to get that information and it travels in their bag, which is phenomenal. Really easy. Really, really, really critical to games. We need to use them in high leverage situations. And I'm going to give you an example of where dynamometry actually gave us a competitive advantage. 2020, we had COVID. We had a COVID shortened season. And the team really needed to rely on one reliever in particular.
I haven't heard him cut out.
And what we had found with this particular reliever is that he was super strong. His arm strength was not depleting after outings or during the homestands. And so in a 22-day period, we pitched this guy 14 times, sometimes multiple innings, okay? And he kept us in the hunt. Without them, we would have totally sucked. So, we know the reliever is a critical piece to our success, and they throw more regularly. They don't have enough recovery time. We need to be able to assess them, and relievers are getting injured more than starting pitchers to the professional level, so we need to do something about it. This implementation is kind of an issue. With the other technology I talked about, it's hard to manage that when it's not player-led, but it's really simple. The pre-throwing exam in total with the warm-up takes 15 minutes, but if you use the dynamometer for the exam, it's only 6 minutes for one arm. You do range of motion and strength. That is definitely time effective. Player comes in the door, they activate their arm, you get their shoulder and arm ready. We do an arm primer. We do a straight arm test that measures strength from the front of the shoulder all the way through the hand and the back of the shoulder to get them prepared for our examination. Because a lot of athletes are going to feel uncomfortable to go right into a test and press maximum. But you get through the exam, and then, the baseball program, that's up to you guys. I'm just giving an example. Don't think this is like the gospel, but the way that you might put in baseball program, you take them through a dynamic warm-up, you go into a throwing specific warm-up, you put them in the throwing program. But during this time period, you're able to talk to your athletes and tell them how you're pivoting in your program based on their strength. You've already evaluated them. And if you got a high school athlete, they can do this in the lunch hour. They can do this, before they come to school. College and pro baseball, this is a slam dunk. This is simple to do. In your facilities, simple to do. Athlete comes in 15 minutes early, and they got to get prepped anyway for your lesson and what you're going to do with them. So it's really easy to do. You then put them through their high intensity throwing day, whether it's a bullpen, a game, or a velo day if it's scheduled. And then we do the post throwing exam. Okay? We have to see what is the effect of our throwing program on the athlete's arm. And that also determines our training and our recovery process. Okay? And then the player's out the door. It's very easy to use. All right? Very, very easy to use. That's the message I want for you guys. If you're thinking like, okay, I use a sophisticated word like dynamometry, throw that out the window. This is easy. Easy force testing for the throwing. So the metrics are what really matter most. You are paying for the data, okay? The dynamometer itself is completely inexpensive, very inexpensive. The subscription, very expensive, okay? The data is gold. And what we look at in the data is first we're looking at arm strength. It's the key metric. Everything goes off of arm strength, and we look at the to body ratio. The strength throwing arm, okay, relative to their body. Absolute terms like how many pounds they can press, but relative to their body. Look at our shoulder balance. We want to see the internal rotator cuff. Are they? And that's a big aspect of it. Now we have to look at arm fatigue. We talked about that. We need strength after they throw. That's going to allow us to individualize. It's going to allow us to customize, make adjustments on the next time around. We have a metric called the strength velocity ratio. If you're doing velocity enhancement programming using weighted ball and those types of techniques, you want to see that as velocity increases, strength increases, because what happens biomechanically, if you email me, I'll send you studies, is that there's a linear relationship. So if I increase my velocity by 1 mile per hour, my torque on my elbow also goes up by 1 unit, 1 Newton. And we're running into problems if the athlete's strength is going down, because now we're not withstanding that increase in load. Okay, that's an important feature you need to understand. And over time, that's a problem.
We were told to be 30 minutes early, so no, you don't.
Program work.
Okay. And then I'll have you
performing, adequately during the season, and that's because they've had a strength loss. So we have to ensure that their arms are strong. And then we have arm recovery. All athletes do something differently for recovery. All the coaches in the room, everybody who's here has a different strategy in recovering the athlete. But what we're doing is, so we have to see how the arm bounces back. So right now that are going to be incredibly helpful to you and valuable in the way that you program your athletes.
It's like he's chopping it.
Now, time is an issue, and that's for everybody. When I was in Major League Baseball, I had 300 athletes. I spent just an absorbent amount of time looking at data. I almost got divorced, okay? I didn't know my kids for a while. 16 hours a day looking at all these athletes. It was crazy. And farming out individualized programs to each one of them. We have the coaches portal, which in 5 minutes, you can open it up and you can see which athletes are most sensitive. You're basically looking for colors. And we give you some advice in terms of what you need to do, but you also have the opportunity to make an open interpretation. Now, if you don't have access to a computer, we also have a coach's app, a coach's mobile app. You can be on the can, you can be in the bus, you can be in the plane, you could be, bored doing something. You could scroll through your athletes. You're on the field, you can scroll through your athletes and understand, who needs a program adjustment to keep them safe, keep them healthy. So it's very easy, it's very time effective. Okay, that's why I love our technology. And it's simple to understand. You're looking for numbers that go up and down. Okay? Other technologies, you have to have more open interpretation. This is very easy. What's going down? What's the color showing me? In comprehensive monitoring, a lot of us are focused in baseball on external workload. We're looking at how the athlete threw it in the past, how we're going to program in the future. And I like it, but it's only half the story. It's only half the story. The other half is we have to understand the strength. So if you think of external workload, it's basically looking at the mileage in a car, if the athlete's a car, and we're looking at the velocity, okay, of how they're throwing, the intensity and how much, the volume. But what we don't know is the engine. And that's what our technology tells you. It gives you an interpretation of what is the engine. If you're having them drive 10 miles at 10 miles an hour or 100 miles at 100 miles an hour, it's going to have, potentially similar effects if the arm is weak. And consequently, if you're giving your throwing athletes a lot of light training days, that's a problem too. When they're very strong, you're undertraining them. You're also exposing them to risk. So we need to be specific. They work hand in hand, okay? For those of you who have the pulse sleeve, you're an expert in it. I'm telling you, you're going to be 100 times more effective by understanding the engine, okay? I'm going to have Zach up, just so you guys can see. I got the screen, but you can see how easy it is. All you need is a box or a wall, and down beside it. Okay, it's just max into the wall. It's very, very easy to use. Can be done. We need to look at, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about strength, is we need to have internal rotation strength acceleration. This is important for arm speed, okay? It's also important to manage the layback speeds of the arm. I'm going to talk about that later today at our booth. I'm going to on the biomechanical interception.
He's cutting out. I don't know if he's too far away. He's cutting out now.
You guys are going to be seeing the athlete pushes back.
It could be a loose wire on the ladder.
That's after the ball is thrown. We need to have strength in the back of our shoulder, and they need to be. That's a pretty easy test to do. Again, only surface. Then we have scaption. Okay, might be a tough one. You need strength measurement, how the arm raised. So that's another perspective. You guys are doing the full hand grip. It doesn't focus on the muscles that are so important to stability of the elbow. We grip a baseball with these 3 fingers, right? Our thumb and the 2 fingers. And the force that we're able to produce with these fingers and the thumb are the ones that actually stabilize the medial elbow. They've looked at studies with the elbow under ultrasound and seen that what the fingers contribute to in flexion to stability of the elbow. And these 3 fingers are huge. When we get fatigue here, that's a big risk for Tommy John surgery. That's the one I'm concerned most with, okay? Now we got our XL and decel tests. These are our long lever tests that I said we do in the arm primer. We do this before we throw. We need to be able to go out, but know where the strength is at on each given day. This allows us to be dynamic, okay? It takes a minute. You're gonna check this strength, and then essentially what you're gonna go and do is you're gonna say, I'm gonna make a decision on my athlete. Today I'm gonna kick it up, I'm gonna hit the gas, throttle down, or I'm gonna hit the brake. It's really simple, and we're looking at the force that's transferred from the trunk through to the fingertips. So that's an important strength measure. Then we have our decel strength testing. That's when we're pushing back. Now, he changed his arm position because I want to show you that you want to make it release point specific with your athletes when you use this, because the highest forces, they really come around at release point. Okay, so we need to ensure that they have strength in the positions that they biomechanically use. So that's important. This is just a little bit of a demo. Thanks, Zach. You're gonna see how it just scrolls through, countdown, very simple, it's audible. You press maximally, there's a forced time curve. We're not doing a ton of it with it yet, but there's gonna be some sports science going on around that. And they get a rest period. We have a shortened rest period so we can see what's the bounce back factor of the arm. Okay, press again, 5 minutes, or 5 seconds, sorry. And then if it's not within range, we do a third. We want the data to be really good. Okay, so we'll do a third and we'll make sure that the measurements are reliable. We want this to be with the athlete longitudinally, okay, for the rest of their career. So one of the important messages that I want to start getting to my closing here, you guys have been great listening to this, is that we need to individualize. Can't say it enough. There's been studies that have been done in coaches, such as yourself, to see how they evaluate strength. And what's really surprising is that most coaches see strength as only a very limited risk factor to injury. They're more focused on biomechanics, more focused on range of motion, but strength is key. And coaches are looking for a way to individualize. They're looking for that assistance. They want to be able to sell that to their athletes that, hey, this is custom for you. You're not doing what Johnny's doing. You're going to do something different. You know, and today I had a program for this. No, we're going to make a change today because your strength is up. I want to increase the intensity. This one size fits none it's a pretty simple concept. It's just that in the general strength programs for throwing athletes, about 50% protection is what you get. Okay. And the reason being is we may be training our athletes into injuries. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's true. If we don't know their imbalances, we don't know where they're weak, we don't know where they're strong, we may be feeding into imbalances and we may be causing injury by not individualizing. And we're all responsible for it. Okay, so that's a really important message. And so the next is, my email's at the top. I don't know many people. I've been locked behind a major league wall for a long time. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm trying to make friends, trying to be connected. I put stuff out. Probably a lot of you guys flip through and say, I'm not listening to that. I've put out 6.5 hours of free content already. Many lectures. I love to educate. I'm a professor background and I love to teach. And I'd like for you guys to be able to reach out to me because I do think we can help you. Right now, we offer a Certified ArmCare Specialist Course. So I want to educate you. Okay, our company wants to educate you to be absolutely proficient in using our technology. And we're giving away merchandise at a $920 value to get you started, okay? To get you going with this product and get you on the forefront, not the back end, and give your athletes a competitive advantage. We're at booth 1336. If you guys flip by, today I'm gonna be talking about a few things. I'm gonna talk about the introduction to arm strength, the apex of key performance metrics. That's at 3:30. I'm gonna go through that. Friday, there are going to be biomechanical causes of injury related to muscular. We're going to talk about that. And Saturday, I'm going to talk about a new form of training called cross-education training for the throwing arm. Okay, it's a new paradigm in how to train the athletes based on science, based on injury research and immobilization. Okay, so it'll be a lot of fun. But I want to close out just by saying that you guys are the ones to really drive this. Okay, we can talk about this product. I can be up here and do the dog and pony show everywhere around the world, but it doesn't matter. We're just the vehicle. We just give you the tool, and you guys are the most important people in the equation to really lessen our arm injuries. So, that's what I wanted to leave you with. I thank you very much for your attention. We have a little bit of time. I have about 8 minutes. If you guys have questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. Thank you. Any questions? Oh yeah, we got one in the back. Awesome. I was like, I'm gonna have to make up a question.
So you're talking about strength deficits and like, let's say the recovery isn't as good as you would like it to be on a given day. That obviously led to an increased risk of injury from the studies you guys did, the data you have. Did it also lead to decreased velocity and decreased performance?
Yes, for sure. Yes, for sure. And in some cases, you lower your strength, you're gonna lose arm speed. So we also we use the Motus sleeve. when really it was only really good for arm speed measurements. It wasn't consistent for us for load. But what we would see is a change in arm strength of their athletes. We're losing RPMs, right? If we lose RPMs, biomechanically, we're not putting enough velocity on the baseball. We're going to throw slower. However, here's the issue. I got really worried when athletes would gain arm speed and lose strength, because now I knew that velocity increase was not coming from strength. It was coming from elasticity. The catapult was cranking back, and when we get a gain of external rotation, I talk about this in a couple of these presentations, but we're increasing the loading on the elbow, okay? Because you think of a catapult, I'm bringing it back further at the hinge, it's just getting a lot more stress. So that was a big risk. So it's kind of partial in that question. We had some velocity decreases, we had some velocity increases with strength deficits, and both were kind of concerning. One was more on the performance side, and the other was really health driven, okay? And that's what I like about our technology. It's not just a performance tool. You can use it to train, but it is also a preventative tool. We're really focused on health, man. Like in this industry of baseball, it's crazy. There's so many metrics. There's, spin rates and spin axis, all this stuff. And nobody cares about innings pitched anymore. Nobody cares about, the player being on the field. Like all of those metrics, they don't mean SHIT. We need to get our athletes on the field. We need to keep them on the field. We need to keep them healthy. But that's an awesome question, man.
Was it pretty black and white that when they didn't recover, you always brought the workload down on that day?
So we go over this in the course. You have to determine what's the status of the athlete. Are they a fatigable athlete? Do they have poor recovery? Or are they weak? Okay? If you have an athlete that's fatigued, post-throwing assessments that are very weak, or they don't recover well, they don't bounce back, you have to figure out, it's like a volume mixer. Do I increase the throwing intensity and decrease training, or can I decrease the throwing work and increase strength? We have to play between those things, strong and throw. We have to figure those out. So in some cases, if they were weak, if they were fatigued and they were not recovering very well, we had to lower the throttle. But in the case that we needed to see that they weren't fatiguing, okay, they were recovering well, but they had poor strength, we had to hit the gas. We had to get them stronger. Yeah, we increased the intensity there. Thanks. We got about 5 minutes. Yeah, I got a question here.
You do your initial evaluation, you get your metrics. When are you proposing reassessment for all the kids you did your metrics for?
Okay, good question. So, the observation windows is very important. We want to do a weekly examination in a recovered state. So if you're a pitcher, as you're a starting pitcher, you do it on your bullpen day. If you're a reliever, you try to get them 72 hours after an outing. Most relievers, at least at lower levels, they're not going back-to-back days. So you can get that capture, okay? The post-throwing, you want to be able to do that anytime they do high-intensity throwing, game, bullpen, velocity enhancement day. You want to make sure you take the time to do that. Now, our arm primer, you're doing before throwing. You're doing it daily. You're getting a check on the day to see where are the guys at, or the gals, whoever's throwing that day. And so we're never missing observations. It's weekly, it's routine, it's daily. So, that's important. That's how we can really thwart injuries, because if we don't do that, we're missing time points. Like I had in Major League Baseball, guys would go on the road, strength would be, way down. He throws 110 pitches, and all of a sudden he shows up with some micro damage, some soreness in his elbow. We didn't evaluate that. We had a lot of holes, and we were successful. That's why I want to tell you that, I don't want you to think that what we did in professional baseball is perfect by any means. I showed that nice graph. There was a lot of limitations and a lot of things that I think this technology fixes. Is there any other questions? We got about 3 minutes. I guess I want to see you all. I mean, you guys hung in. I want to see you guys all at our booth. I think it'll be phenomenal to get to know you actually personally and have you demo. Here's one thing we're going to throw out there. We are doing the strongest arm for the ABCA competition. We're going to give you a prize of $1,000 value. We want you to go in and see what you can do so you can experience the technology, and you can see for yourself the power of it and how easy it is to use. So come by, we're booth 1336. I look forward to meeting you all. Again, I hide on LinkedIn. Come find me there, or Ryan at armcare.com. So appreciate you. Thank you, guys and gals.